Race relations. Well, everywhere has some issues regarding race relations. I think since I've been in Augusta, I've only had to encounter it twice, but it was no big deal to me. But anyway, it's here. We get along quite well. Sometimes it's really difficult to see, but I think the members of our community gets along very well. That was one of the draws when I retired to come back to Augusta. You get along, but there are problems. There are problems. We're more polished in how we deal with it than most communities, but we do have some issues regarding race. But I find that if you deal with people in a positive, non-threatening manner, you get along well with most people. Very few people I have a problem with, but there are issues in our community against a variety of things. And race relations is one of those things, if you don't work on trying to conquer it or eliminate it, it's going to constantly grow. I think all city employees should have some type of race relation training class every year. I worked for the federal government, and that was one of our things every year in our annual training to receive race relations training. Because if you leave it up to individuals to do it on their own, some will do it and some won't, you know. And I think the more you get to know a culture, a person, the better your chances are to get along with them. I've been fortunate to live in a variety of places throughout the country and over in Europe, and I got along because I was eager to understand the other culture. And people, we have so much stress in our society today. People have to have something or a platform to blame their discomfort on. But I think Augusta has always been easy to deal with, I guess is a good way of putting it.
Yeah, so it sounds like you don't think there's really a lot of race issues in town.
Visible.
Sure.
Visible. There are some.
Yeah, there's always going to be some.
There's a lot of perception. But as a whole, I don't really think there's a lot of dangerous race relation issues because Augusta's a fine community. You don't find many issues with that. You find them individually.
Do city employees currently go through any race-related training?
I won't say yes or no because I really don't know exactly, but they do have annual training, but I don't believe race relations is in there.
Okay.
I would have to check to be 100% sure.
Okay. Other than training for, back up. When I was in the Marines back in 2004, we had training sessions on everything at least once every couple months, right? We hated it. Sensitivity training, for different, whatever that you can think of, Other than that type of training for city employees, is there anything that any solutions that you would propose community-wide, or that you see that's needed?
Well, it's one initiative that the mayor's office had put out to form a community board or commission of individuals to look at issues, race relation issues and such, confronting the community. For example, if I'm a citizen and I have an issue with some department store, you would come to this board or this group and voice your concern. And that board or group would try to work out the situation and address the problem, not necessarily as an individual, but as a problem. And then you have an avenue, and then I have an avenue to complain and voice my concerns, which in turn, if I didn't have that avenue, it would build up and may end up being something drastic.
So you're in favor of what the mayor proposed related to that?
Pretty much. There could be some tweaking in how to set up the board, who will be on the board, that kind of thing.
Is there concern about abuse on that and people being unfairly taking before some board of citizens for a race-related issue that may just be a different type of grievance?
Well, I've worked with the NAACP for many, many years, and one of my techniques has always been, you come to me with a complaint, I take your complaint, I make you write it, because if you don't put nothing in writing, it didn't happen. And then that was my responsibility, would look into the complaint before it got out to be a big problem, you know. And you can't just take a person's, I don't want to say that, you can't let the person complain without doing some investigation to find if there's any merit. Because 9 times out of 10, most people that complain really don't have any merit in their complaint. But at least you have this board to review your complaint. You're not necessarily, the board shouldn't be going out to any organization. Well, you discriminated against Dennis for coming down here and buying
So you don't
a shirt.
think that the board should go to the NAACP, like you said, for example, and
No.
seek complaints out?
It should be, the board should be interested in issues that would harm the image of the community. So,
And did that proposal have some type of fine structure? Then what happens if they find that you were wrong?
well, if they find out, oh, the person with the false claim, I think it was something in there. But I wouldn't put a fine on it because
If it doesn't have a fine, what's the point of the board if it can't enforce anything?
you have that ear. See, that's one of the things, a lot of times people just need somebody to hear their problem. You hear the problem, you go through investigating the problem, and then you make a decision. Look, Dennis, you really don't have nothing here. There's nothing, you wasn't discriminated against because on Thursdays they load the truck. You came there on Thursday afternoon, the truck was already loaded. So, you couldn't get your product, 'cause something like that.
If the accused party doesn't want to participate or go to a hearing, I mean, would they be compelled legally to go and?
We have not, as far as I know, we have not gotten that detailed in the structure of the board.
Okay. And so you don't think that the laws on the books currently are sufficient to deal with those race issues and that this board could fill that gap?
I think what the board does, it gives the presentation to the community that there is concern. Now, this board shouldn't be changing any rules and regulations of any business or any organization. It's just related, as I understand it, it's only structured to look at it from a community point of view. So a person has an issue or a group of people have an issue, they could bring it to the board and the board could help work out what type of solution should be done. So it's still in the mixing stage as far as I'm concerned. Still in the mixing stage to really get exactly what it should be. And you have to do that from a variety of people, with a variety of backgrounds.
So I think the complaint from a lot of people that I've heard on that is somebody's going to go and name me in some discrimination complaint, frivolously, whatever the reason, right. And then all of a sudden my name's going to be on a list, or I'm going to be publicly accused of doing something that's completely not accurate. Do you think that's a valid concern?
It should be, but as I understand it, this board or commission, that's not their task to publicize your name. The task, as I understand it, is to look at what the problem was presented to them, not falsely, not accusing anybody, anything, but just looking into it. For example, let's say the gay community has a complaint with their parade every year with the sheriff's department. You don't get enough deputies or whatever it could be. they may come to the board. That's something that the board can look at without any accusing, you know. And that's something that could possibly solve a problem in the long run. But it's still one of those things where it's still kind of in the design stage because we don't have a whole lot of people in favor of it. But I think it would be a good tool that could be used to promote how I want to say this, to promote the city's interest in making sure our citizens are happy.
Have y'all seen this done elsewhere before where it was successful?
Well, I know a few places, but there was no places provided to us, if I remember correctly.
What city has tried this before that you know of?
Well, I worked with the federal government. That was one of my jobs. I was an EEO counselor in the Army. Then when I got out and started working with the VA, one of my additional jobs was EEO counselor. And we had it here one time, but the structure we had last time with Frank Thomas's office is not what we want this time. It was a separate office that dealt with it, but that's not.
But any specific government municipalities, cities like Atlanta, Savannah, Macon?
I would say I don't know, to
Okay.
be perfectly honest,
Okay.
in detail. I can't remember.
One more question on that. You had said that roughly 9 out of 10 complaints typically don't have any merit. And the city is really short budget wise. Having challenges. Do you think that if 9 out of 10 of the complaints really have no merit, is this a good use of resources? Because it almost makes it look like there's a race issue in town that needs to be addressed when it sounds like there really isn't.
I see. I didn't look at it that way. I looked at it as where a person with an issue has somewhere to go to voice their concern.
Don't they have that now, though?
Now, if you're a city employee, but I'm talking about the community as a whole.
But there's federal legislation and a lot of nonprofit legal service groups that help people that are truly aggrieved to go and get.
Well, that's if you have a problem with your job or the city or something like that you want to file an EEO grievance against.
Well, that could actually carry forward to non-government or
yeah, it
non-job
can go
related issues.
non-government. But you do have a good point. But my desire, I guess you could say, is that a citizen has somewhere to go and feel comfortable in going, not necessarily to cause an issue, but to voice some concern. I'm not saying that this board is supposed to sit down and take your complaint, file it through Atlanta to EEOC, and once you get a right to sue letter, help you find an attorney to sue whoever it is. I don't think that should be the work of the board. I think the work of the board is to try to help solve or smooth out problems. That's the same thing. But John shouldn't come down here and say, Georgia Power fired me and they shouldn't have fired me. That's not what the board, in my opinion, should be.
Because there are legal avenues that they can take for issues.
And they have their own avenue to take.